The Orange Zone, sponsored by Apex Entertainment.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Orange Zone podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, joining you to talk some football, some hoops. Good time to say we are actually coming back from a trip at Citi Field. I'm sure many of you know this, but we also have another podcast called Why Am I a Mets Fan? Me or Ashley will drop that link to that podcast in the comments. If you like baseball, Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, we talk about a lot of things despite the title name being Mets. And of course, the Syracuse Mets as well, so check that out. Hi, Ashley. How you feeling after that Citi Field trip?
Good. Lovely trip down to Citi Field. Obviously, it was a great opportunity to kind of get down there and see everybody in person, see the players, see the entire Citi Field thing. Mets have a lot of excitement around them this year. So, yeah, if you're a Mets fan or just a baseball fan, we do really touch on pretty much everything big that happens. Like even, Vlad Guerrero Jr. signed an extension with the Blue Jays. Going to touch on that later. So, Mets and the biggest baseball things.
Yep. Not to mention, we did also see Mark Vientos. We talked to him, so hopefully we'll have a piece on that coming out shortly. So Syracuse Mets, all that jazz. Feel free to follow that. Anyway, we're talking some Syracuse stuff today. We're going to start with Syracuse football because there was some big breaking news this week, which is that Syracuse football has named their new starting quarterback.
Yeah, life beyond Kyle McCord begins for Syracuse football. Fran Brown at his media availability on Monday, yesterday, really didn't waste any time. First question was, how's the quarterback race shaping up? And he was like, I think he's our quarterback. But you know what I love about Fran is he always hedges just a little. It's always, I think he's going to be our quarterback. He'll probably be our quarterback.
Really?
It's always a think or a yeah.
That doesn't sound like him to me.
I just think that's a funny. I think he wants to not trap himself so that if he's wrong, he can't be like, well, I said I think. Anyway, Rickie Collins transferred in from LSU last offseason. First real time that he joined the team was actually at the Holiday Bowl in San Diego. So he did get to be around Kyle McCord for a few months. Obviously, I think, a question that's going to be in fans' minds is, how can he kind of learn things and grasp the playbook this fast. He's only been here for a couple of months, but hopefully as the spring and then, summer, fall camp continues to wear on, we'll get some answers to those questions. I think that was the obvious choice. I'm not surprised by that at all. I don't think you bring a guy in from LSU and pay him the NIL money that was probably required to bring him here only to not name him your starter. So he is right now a redshirt sophomore, and I think what's exciting about him is he has 3 years of eligibility left. Now, you never know these days with the portal and everything else, but this could be the guy at Syracuse, not just for 1 year, but for a few years if he does well.
100%. And that's something that in the Fran Brown era, we haven't gotten the chance to see. We saw the way that Fran Brown is able to, kind of make Kyle McCord adapt to whatever it is that they're running, or maybe Syracuse football, I guess, adapts to McCord in a certain way because, again, McCord and Rickie Collins, completely different styles, completely different kinds of quarterbacks. And I think with Collins, you could expect to see somebody that's a little more mobile. That's not a bad thing.
No.
It's okay that he has a different style. Like, they'll adapt to that. And I think that that's what I like about the Syracuse football era that I see now is, to me, it really feels like no matter who the quarterback is, they're going to figure out a way to design plays and make sure that the quarterback is comfortable within his own style. I'm excited to see what he brings. Obviously, we can't talk a ton about what we've been able to see because what we've seen has been limited to practice. What I can say is when he came out for that first media availability a couple weeks ago, I liked everything that I saw. There were people who were asking him about, Kyle McCord and the comparisons, and he sort of gave me that aura of, comparison is the thief of joy. I'm not interested in that. I'm going to, just focus on myself, try and define my own legacy, and I have already even spoken to McCord a couple times and been able to kind of establish that relationship. So I think McCord has been nothing but helpful to him, and it's sort of nice to see the way that family essentially builds,
Yeah, Fran Brown actually touched on that yesterday as well. I actually asked him, I was like, did Kyle like him? What are Kyle's thoughts?
That's a great question.
And he said, basically, Kyle endorsed him. He said he's very smart all the time he spent with him. Kyle really thinks that he took everything that he possibly could from his time at one of the premier programs in the country at LSU. Obviously, at LSU, Collins was there for 2 years, 23 and 24. He got to sit behind and learn from a Heisman winner in Jaden Daniels, obviously now with the Commanders, and Garrett Nussmeier, a guy who's one of the best quarterbacks in the league as well. So I think to sit behind those guys for 2 years like he did, and Daniels has been interviewed and has kind of talked about Collins a couple of times to some 24/7 Sports college football websites and says that he thinks he has a lot of potential. I think to get endorsements from those types of guys is huge. Obviously now he has to live up to the hype, and I think we'll see if he can do that. Coming out of high school, he was a top 20 quarterback in the country. So really one of those guys that just in his third year is finally going to get his shot, and we're going to see what that brings. Now also, as you kind of touched on, he has huge shoes to fill. I mean, what Kyle McCord did last year was quite literally unprecedented at Syracuse and in the ACC, not just at Syracuse.
Yep.
So big shoes to walk into, I think.
And he's going up against a tougher schedule. Let's be fair.
I was going to say, to play devil's advocate for a moment, I think there could be a learning curve here for Rickie Collins. Do I think Rickie Collins, maybe in a year or two, could be great? Yeah, could he be great this year? Sure. But the reality of the situation is you are starting your college career, first time as a starter, against Tennessee and Atlanta, and then you have to face one of the toughest schedules in the country this year with like 4 or 5 teams that made the playoff last year. So I think where things are going to get tricky, just to look into the future for a second, is Collins kind of taking this pressure, taking over as a leader for the first time, as a starter for the first time, and then dealing with that schedule and all of the, of course, scrutiny and whatnot that's going to come with that. So I think this could be a learning transitional year, and then maybe we'll see what is to come in 2026, but I don't want to go out on a limb and, be too negative. I just think the writing could be on the wall there.
And you know what? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt until I have a reason not to. I think that, like you said, the schedule, extremely challenging. So I almost feel like you can't actually compare them.
Yeah.
McCord's performance to whatever Collins is able to do. But that being said, I even felt like Fran Brown kind of had that mindset when we were asking him questions. Like, he's telling Collins, don't think about Kyle McCord.
Yeah.
Don't even look back at that year. That has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
You need to focus on this year and what you're able to do. Like, there's no reason for them to compare. And I actually think that's a good mindset, especially for somebody who, like you said, is coming in, has not had a year where he started. It is a little bit difficult to be a leader when you're kind of just stepping on the field for the first time. You're thinking about your performance. You're trying to establish yourself. Not to mention he just transferred. Like, he's just getting to know these guys when there are some other guys who have been here and been leaders for a long time. But that's okay.
Yeah.
You need the quarterback to be a leader. You don't need him to be Kyle McCord and a second coach. You don't actually need that, in my opinion. It helps. But you have a guy like Pena, who they named a captain for a good reason. It's okay if you just have some upperclassmen who are also able to help with that leadership and that skill set. So I'm actually comfortable with that for now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be exciting to also see, right? Kyle was it was a perfect fit, perfect time. We've talked about it to come in here in Fran Brown's first year, but to see this coaching staff with Fran Brown and Jeff Nixon and the other offensive coaches and Nunzio Campanelli, to see them actually be able to develop a quarterback, provided that Collins does succeed and is here for 2 or 3 years, that's going to be exciting, right? They didn't really have to develop Kyle. Kyle kind of walked in here on day one and you knew what you were going to get in essence. So I think to see them develop Collins is going to be exciting. 2 more things just at the front of my mind before we kind of wrap up the Collins discussion. Brown said he won the job because he felt that it was, and I don't know if this is coach speak or what this was, but it just was interesting. He said that he felt it was, quote, even in the race, and that if it was an even race, he felt Collins should win since he's only been here for 3 months and is new to the playbook and whatnot. That was just a little odd to me. Like, he did not, I just want to say it, he did not get up there and rave about Rickie Collins. It was basically like, we felt it was even, and if it was even, I don't know if that was motivational towards Collins. I think Brown is careful in how he phrases things, to motivate his players still and to not hype them up too much. So that was an interesting you want to say something about that? And then
I think I have no problems with that. I actually sort of like that because I think that Fran Brown is trying to, at all times, recruit the sorts of players who, when faced with adversity, are going to try and prove him wrong. And when you kind of phrase things that way, and Collins is able to check out the media and see the coverage and it says it was relatively even, there's really 2 options. Either it really was even,
right,
and Collins has either some work to do, or some of the other backup QBs overperformed, or just were great or were good, or he's just sort of saying that, and that's not really the full truth. Honestly, with Fran Brown, you kind of never know. Like, there have been times where he has gone up there and just said something where you're kind of like, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you're not really sure what exactly is trying to be said. But I don't have a problem with that. I think especially now, Collins is new. Why should they not be battling? And we both know this. Fran Brown always, at all times, has said that everybody is competing for a spot.
Yeah.
And even though you knew with a guy like, let's say, McCord, like his spot was secure, like, it's good for players to feel like they're still battling. That's not a bad mindset to have.
Sure. I think if you're Rickie Collins and you see that coverage, maybe you have him in it and you're like, oh, damn. Like, he didn't get up there and, like, I think it's good for athletes in that sense to be motivated like that. And then the last thing is, obviously, he won the job over guys like Michael Johnson Jr. He is a 5th, 6th year veteran. I really kind of wonder what the future holds for him there, not winning that job, son of the tight ends coach. And redshirt sophomore, Jakari Williams. Also, there's a couple of true freshmen, Luke Carney and company, but I don't think they were really as much in the conversation. You really felt like it was Johnson Jr., Collins, and Jakari. And I actually asked Fran Brown because I think it's okay to wonder how Jakari Williams feels about this, right? He was here last year as a freshman, learned under Kyle McCord for a year, and then they actively get a transfer in the transfer portal that now wins the job over Jakari. And
I'd be so gutted.
They're right around the same age, right? So that's tough. So I asked Fran Brown kind of what his conversation was like with Jakari. And of course, he gave a very Fran Brown answer of being like, well, now you got to battle to be number 2. I want him to go out there and fight to be number 2. He also, when he answered the first question about Collins winning the job, did have a tidbit in there that said, there could be some guys that hit the portal. Now, I don't know if he means that about Jakari Williams. I think it's natural to wonder about him the most since he's a redshirt sophomore. And if Collins really is here for 3 more years, there's really no road there for Jakari Williams. But I actually have an interesting take on that. And I just think that if I were Jakari Williams, I actually think it's worth it to at least stay for this season and see how things play out. Say Williams really is the number 2, or it's some sort of a share between him and Johnson Jr., but he's the de facto number 2 and everybody kind of knows it. We don't know what's going to happen with Rickie Collins yet. First of all, quarterbacks get hurt all the time. A full season of healthy Kyle McCord was one of the first time that's happened at Syracuse in years. A full year of a healthy quarterback. So you have the injury factor, but then you also have, like I'm saying, we just don't know what Collins is yet. If you get to week 4 or week 5 and things are really not going well, there could be a shake-up situation. So I see where people are going to be quick to jump and think Jakari might transfer. I could be wrong and play this back in 2 weeks and he's in the transfer portal. But I don't think it's the worst idea for him to at least stay 1 year and see how things go.
Here's the other thing. No matter where you're going or where you're transferring to, someone else already has the job.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? I don't always think the grass is greener. That's not to say Williams could go somewhere and it's a better situation. He could go somewhere and it's a worse situation. The truth is you don't know until you get there, though.
Yeah.
It's going to be a battle whether it's here or somewhere else. So I actually am inclined to agree with you. Not to mention, obviously being here, you know that you're getting more than football. And I would have to think these guys like the school, like the culture, like being coached by Fran Brown. You have the financial literacy stuff, the 60-day job program. Like, not every program has that.
Yeah.
There are other things to consider, especially if it's unclear kind of what your role is going to be. So I totally hear where you're coming from. I wouldn't be surprised to see him hop into the transfer portal, but I do find it fascinating that a lot of people in media act like that's the easy way out when I actually don't always know that it's easier.
Yeah.
It honestly depends on where you go and how hard you battle at the next place and what the situation is there.
And when you have a question mark, Collins is a question mark. It's not a Kyle McCord. So when you have a question mark, I don't think it's the worst idea to stick around and at least see how that goes. So to kind of wrap up the football talk, spring game is this Saturday. It's been moved back to the Dome, which is very exciting. It's at 3 o'clock. They're going to do a whole quad walk, players meet and greet situation kind of beforehand at 1 o'clock. I know Fran Brown and the coaching staff just keeps referring to it as they want it to be this party, this block party. There's going to be food trucks. Players going to be signing autographs. It's going to be a whole thing. So,
by the way, the block party actually starts earlier. I think fans are allowed to roll up around 11. So check that out on the website. But it should be a full day of fun if you guys want to go and meet people and whatever. I think that'd be kind of a cool thing for fans to be able to do.
And Brown said they will be hitting, unsurprisingly, the spring game. They're going to have pads on. It's going to be an orange team, a blue team. They will be hitting and scrimmaging and the whole 9 yards. So I think obviously what always every year to watch out for at that game is really just, who seems to be kind of the first string, second string, that kind of thing, of course. And then also all eyes are going to be on the Collins situation. I'm interested at least to see if he puts Collins out there, because last year with McCord, I don't even think he played at all in the spring game, or he might have played a couple snaps. He kind of hid McCord, and of course you do that for other teams and tape and all that. So it's going to be interesting if we actually see Collins.
Mind you, obviously, as you guys know, we're filming, so we'll put out as many clips as we can, but this game is not televised.
No.
So it is not as though it's going to be necessarily easy access to see it if you're not there. Yeah. Hang out on our channels, check out the Orange Zone, because we'll try and put up as much as we can.
Yeah.
All right, let's pop over to some basketball for now. Couple exciting things going on there. Obviously, at this point, it's sort of that transfer portal season where we're figuring out who's in, who's out. And the first person I want to start with is Naithan George, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets transfer. He was a sophomore this past year. He's a point guard. He was highly sought after in the transfer portal, and Syracuse was able to get him.
Yeah, this is the most exciting one that Adrian Autry has been able to reel in so far, and I don't think it's particularly close. He led the ACC in assists last year. That's what you want from your point guard.
Yeah.
And Syracuse really didn't have a true point guard last year. Obviously, you had Jaquan Carlos, and that was kind of a failed experiment. You saw J.J. Starling play on the ball sometime. It was just really kind of a disaster. You had no one running that true point position. So Autry and his staff obviously saw that. He was really the highest rated, most sought after point guard that was in the portal right now. So I think for Syracuse to be able to get him speaks somewhat volumes.
12.3 this is last year's stats. 12.3 points, 4.2 rebounds, 6.5 assists, and he was shooting 40% from the field. All those are per game. That's a good line right there. I mean, you think about that and you think about Syracuse, it feels like Syracuse could have used a guy like him. And listen, I want to go out on a limb and say one thing. The hard part for me about the transfer portal is you think about all the coverage we even did last year. And I'm not picking on him, so nobody think I am. I'm honestly just stating what I sort of believe to be the facts. I do feel like last year somebody who was hyped up as a transfer portal get was a guy like Jaquan Carlos. And I'm not really feeling like he lived up to the expectations of what people had hoped for.
Yeah.
I say that to say you don't always know once a new guy is in a new program what exactly is going to happen. I feel good about the fact that we're grabbing somebody out of the ACC, though.
Yeah, Carlos coming over from Hofstra, I mean, I just called it a failed experiment a few minutes ago. Like, it was a failed experiment by all consideerations. He was not even playing the point guard position.
No, he really wasn't.
If you can't even do your job that they brought you in for at all, rather not even well, you can't do it at all, I'm sorry, it was a failed experiment. What excites me about George, like you said, is has succeeded in ACC play specifically. Actually, his numbers, I was doing a dive on this for the shows the other day when they got him, were better. His average numbers were better in ACC play than they were overall. So that shows you he got better as the year went on. And of course, led the ACC in assists, and Syracuse could use more of a traditional distributor like that because they just did not have that last year. The offense that they were running was missing somebody distributing and facilitating the ball.
First of all, love to hear that about the ACC.
Yeah.
You want to be grabbing guys who are doing better in conference play. That actually makes me feel thrilled. And to your point, it's just hard to know when you're grabbing a guy out of a conference that is perhaps a little bit lesser from a talent standpoint. It is tough to know what's going to happen. And I'm not mad at you calling it a failed experiment because I do kind of think, I'm not saying he didn't contribute anything because I did think he was a good player. But how often did we sit here, me, you, and Lawrence Moten, and say that people did not know their roles, and that was the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Like Moten was literally saying on like the last week, we just had to figure out what our roles are. It's too late for that
it's
now.
It's March. It's February. Like ship has sailed.
The roles are gone. That train has left the station.
Yeah.
It is gone, and that was a problem. So I think having a guy like this, at the very least, helps to establish who's who's playing where, what's your responsibility.
Definitely.
So that's good. Beyond that, another guy who they just got is William Kyle III, 6'9", 230 pounds. He, I believe, has 1 year of eligibility remaining, but this is kind of the guy that they brought in to be the center. Now, he's coming over, correct me if I'm mistaken, from UCLA, where he didn't have a great year by any means.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he wouldn't have a good year here, but that, again, is sort of an example of a different situation, I think, than the one we just discussed.
Yeah, if there's a spot that concerns me right now on this roster, and there's still time left, and I know that, but if there's a spot that I think sticks out to you as a worrisome area, it's kind of that big man center role. Of course, Eddie Lampkin is no longer. Some weird things happening, by the way. I won't go off into that aside, but some strange things happening with Lampkin and Lucas Taylor being like entering the transfer portal.
What's good with that?
When they were supposed to be out of eligibility. Like, listen, if I was not going to the NBA and was clearly not a professional player, I guess I would try to extend my career as long as I could too, but odd. I guess they're applying for more eligibility with the NCAA. Honestly, not our business anymore. Anyway.
We'll let you know if we do find that out. But there are actually more questions than answers at this point.
Yeah.
We are confused with that situation. They're obviously trying to extend their college careers, though.
Yeah. Anyway, so no more Lampkin. The big man situation here is kind of questionable. Obviously, you also have Luke Fennell coming in from Australia.
He tantalizes me, I will say.
Yeah.
That's actually a dude who I'm like really interested to see.
Sure. I'm not going to say William Kyle III is not going to pan out. I'm not going to whatever, but he was not, I guess, exciting or tantalizing at UCLA. So we'll see what happens. I think depth-wise, the center position is certainly the weakest right now on this roster.
His stats last year: 2.9 points per game, 1.8 rebounds, 0.4 assists. Shot 70% from the field.
1.8 rebounds, not what you're looking for.
That's the thing. Like the 2.9 points, I almost don't even care about. Like, I'm just kind of using this as an example. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but Duke has that one guy, their center, who's like 7'2". And honestly, in a lot of the games I watched in March Madness, like I didn't feel like he was really throwing up a whole lot of points, but he literally was just this tree who rebounded the ball and did what he needed to do. 1.8 rebounds.
We'll see.
And again, it does go back to and makes me wonder. I am happy that they're bringing in guys, and those aren't even all of them. You also have like Nate Kings. That was one that came out recently. I do feel like compared to last year, okay, you know, some nice things, some good guys coming out of this. Clearly, they're working in the transfer portal with the help of Mr. Klein, their general manager, Alex Klein. That being said, I do wonder. I think often about Mike Waters' article, and I just still wonder, you know, are they able to be competitive? Like why is William Kyle III the best that Syracuse could get?
Yeah.
Because honestly, just to say it, I'm not even saying, obviously Syracuse had a down year last year, but Syracuse is still an ACC team with a really large, rich history of success.
Yeah.
You would sort of hope that they would be pulling out some other guys from larger conferences. And don't mistake me, I know there are success stories all the time of people who go from D3 to D1 and they're great, or they go from a conference that's maybe not as good as the ACC and then they bump up and they're great. But I would have liked to see maybe some guys that had a little bit more juice or a little bit of a higher caliber ranking.
Yeah, I mean, at least you're seeing all 4 transfers, right, are from power conferences so far.
Yeah,
Kings
true.
from Oregon State, Kyle from UCLA, and then Soare. We'll talk about Ibrahim Soare here for a second. He's another guy who could kind of play the 5, maybe if they needed him to, maybe more of that power forward role. I think he kind of has to define his role a little bit more. He's from Georgia Tech as well. So Soare and George, 2 guys that are actually coming over as teammates or former teammates, and now they're going to be teammates again at Syracuse. So kind of a Georgia Tech takeover there. But I guess, yes, I do agree with what you're saying. I think at least to see these guys coming from power conferences is a step up from last year when it was, you know, your Hofstras of the world and your Delawares of the world. Like, that was certainly worse. Not to say that means that these guys are going to pan out to be much better than last year's class, but I guess it's a step in the right direction. Of course, we won't know any of those NIL numbers, like you said, the Mike Waters article, but I am inclined to believe that they have improved just based on what we've seen so far.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know where the freshmen fall in that. Obviously, we haven't even touched on that yet, right? We all know top 50 recruits in Kyan Anthony and Sadiq White. We know that. We've talked about that before. But you keep Donnie, you keep JJ. Those are 2 guys that absolutely could have commanded a pretty penny on the open market. In the transfer portal. And then the guys you're bringing in so far are, I'll put them in the not bad category.
I would say keeping Donnie and JJ was almost necessary.
Yeah.
It really, really put a different taste, I think, in the mouths of the fans, knowing that they're staying here. Like, you didn't need everybody from last season. Dare I say it might be better that you don't have everybody from last season.
You needed those 2, really. And
you really needed those 2, and you got them. So as far as I'm concerned, Syracuse from a transfer portal season, who did you keep, the commits, I certainly feel better about this roster at this point in time than I did about the roster at this time last year.
I agree.
That's all you can kind of say.
Yeah.
Beyond that, just wanted to give a quick shout out to the Florida Gators, national champions of this year's March Madness tournament. I'm just going to say it so I can say it once. I was really, really surprised to see that. I really, really thought Duke was going to win, and I thought that was one of the all-time greatest chokes in history. I could not believe it. I watched the whole thing live. I'm not sure if you saw it or not, but they were showing the percentage graphics. Honestly, I used to hate them. I love a good win percentage graphic on a game now. Like, for you to have an over 90% chance to win that game and there is legitimately like a little over a minute left and then you lose is absolutely one of the most remarkable things I've ever heard in my entire life.
You're talking about the Final Four game with Duke?
I am talking about the final.
Game?
I am talking about the Final Four game with Duke.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. Florida, I mean, if you want to talk about, people that fought their way to get where they are. I mean, the Duke collapse is that was just remarkable, right? They're winning that game by 2 possessions, by 6 points with 30 seconds to go. It's almost unimaginable
how does that even happen?
I know.
Like, how does that even happen?
I know.
And honestly, I do feel sort of. I know that even within our station, I feel like there are a couple of people who were not sad to see Duke's downfall. But I honestly feel a little bit bad for Cooper Fleck. I feel like there was like a really exciting story that was waiting there to happen. I am sure some people who listen to this podcast will not agree and did not care, but I just couldn't believe that happened. Goes to show that March Madness still has its great moments because that was a great game.
Big for Carmelo Anthony. I know the whole discussion there was kind of like, if Cooper Fleck wins a title, does he unseat Carmelo as the best like one and done player to ever do it? So big day for Anthony's legacy stayed intact. And then I think what was interesting to me about the tournament this year was there was a lot of talk, right? 4-1 seeds. Really not a ton of upsets across the board. I mean, it was pretty much the teams that you expected to be there were there. And I think that's the NIL era. There was a lot of talk about that. But then it was, I guess, good to see in a way that the 2 Final Four games and then, of course, the championship game were still extremely exciting. You're talking about that Duke game last night. I mean, the Florida-Houston National Championship was also not decided until the final minute.
Yep.
Houston's winning the entire game. Florida has the lead for 1 minute and 3 seconds of that game, and they win the game. And that just, to me, I mean, that is, you want to talk about fight. Like, I truly came away from that, and I am not a college basketball expert by any means, but I kind of felt like Houston was the better team.
Yep. Oh,
defensively,
definitely.
I mean, they beat Duke. We saw that. It was really felt like it was Houston's to lose, and they lost it. And if I'm a Houston fan, they've never won a title before. Oh my God. I was sitting there watching that last night, cutting the highlights, put it in the shows at 11 o'clock, and oh my God, they don't even get a shot off. Like, it is so hard to get there, as it is with anything in sports, right? To get to the championship game, and then they don't even get a shot off as time's expiring. Oh my God.
I know, and I have to say, I really love that coach, the Houston coach, and for you to and for you to have that moment where you beat Duke, and it feels sort of like this crazy upset, and then to lose. Hey, that's sports and that's showbiz.
We're winning the whole game.
I know. This is my last question for you, and then we'll get out of here. Do you think, now that you've seen the entire March Madness tournament in the NIL era start to finish, do you think that NIL made the tournament better or worse?
I think it depends on what you're looking for, right? Which is kind of what I just said. If you want upsets in the first few rounds, I think maybe those get less and less as the years go by. It's just the talent that's competing at some of these schools with lesser NIL, some of these G5 schools, even some of these, like Big East schools and stuff. Not all of them, right? I know the Big East is still a premier basketball conference, but some of the lower level schools, the talent there is just not going to be able to compete with teams that are spending $10, $12 million on their roster. I mean, Duke got eliminated the other day in the Final Four, and like 2 hours later, I'm seeing a graphic on, I don't know if it was On3 or one of the college sports sites saying that, Duke is amped up again for next year. They got $10 to $12 million to spend in the portal. If you are McNeese State, you have a fraction of that. You're just not going to be able to compete with that. So that's a deeper conversation for another time. But I think it depends what you're looking for to answer your question. I think kind of the round of 64 and the round of 32 and all that maybe does get a little less exciting because of this NIL. But how can you dispute the fact that having 4-1 seeds, 4 teams that you could confidently say, yeah, that really might be the best team in the country in the Final Four, and then to watch them duke it out certainly was exciting. And we saw that in the 2 games, 2 of 3, which came down to the last seconds.
Watch them duke it out.
Uh-huh.
No, I agree with you. I think just in summary, I would say the first and second rounds were worse. I would say the Final Four was better.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say at this time. Beyond that, any last final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up.
Nope. Excited for the spring game this week. Again, we'll try to push out as much content as we can. We'll be hearing from Fran, and we'll try to, again, put out as much video as we can since we know that it will not be airing anywhere.
Yes. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you always following along, and we will see you back here next week after the spring game with our takeaways.